That morning at brunch, when my father slid 2 envelopes across the table and the whole family leaned in to watch, they decided my fate with a single curl of a lip. My sister got the mansion and the investment portfolio. I got a studio apartment and a sermon about having a real career. They laughed, raised their mimosas, and taught me to accept what I deserved. My phone buzzed beneath the table. A cold, silent line of text, like a blade. The deal was closed. The release was cued. In 5 minutes, the name they treated like a joke would appear on primetime financial news. In 5 minutes, the keys to the mansion they'd just bestowed would belong to the person they'd misjudged for years. Have you ever been boxed in by your own family under the label, "not good enough"? Stay seated. Pour another cup of coffee. When the TV flickers on and the world calls me the CEO behind a $4.2 billion acquisition, you'll see what happens when the overlooked don't ask for fairness. They rewrite the rules. That morning, soft light slipped through the dining room's tall windows and slid across the long wooden table draped in crisp white linen. It wasn't just a family meal. The air was dense, as if every glance and clink of silver carried something far heavier than mimosas and neat trays of pastries. My father sat at the head, imposing in a gray, perfectly tailored plaid suit. He had the ease of a man accustomed to deciding things, to dispensing power and property. Across from him, his 2 daughters, Victoria and me, sat on either side, our eyes sometimes meeting, sometimes dodging. Victoria wore a confident smile with a hint of smugness. I was quiet, eyes lowered, fingers rolling the rim of my water glass, a small ritual to steady the thoughts rising inside me. He rapped a knuckle softly against a sterling fork. The gesture rang like a bell, opening proceedings. He cleared his throat, voice weighty, clipped, absolute. As you both know, your grandfather's estate has finally been settled. It was the signal for a verdict. Slowly, he brought out 2 envelopes, one thick, edges slightly puffed from the papers inside, one thin, light in his hand, like a hard reminder of difference. The moment I saw them, I knew which was mine. I was used to the modest corner assigned to me in this family, used to it, but not resigned. His gaze landed on Victoria first. Pride and a familiar favoritism I'd heard my whole life colored his tone. He spoke of Victoria's business acumen, of the work she'd done at the family firm these past 5 years. I almost laughed. I knew better than anyone what that work looked like. Arriving late, long lunches, and a reliance on her assistant to do anything that required real thought. But my father never cared for reality. He cared for appearances, for the picture he wanted to be true. The thick envelope glided toward Victoria, slow and ceremonial, like a knighting. You'll receive the family mansion, he concluded, along with the corresponding investments. Victoria smiled. Manicured fingers snapped the envelope up as if it were a prize long owed. She didn't bother hiding her triumph. Dad, it's perfect. James and I can move in right after the wedding. A small sting tightened in my chest, not envy for the house, but for the way he turned favoritism into public ritual. Everyone could see it, Victoria crowned, and me the shadow at her side. When it was my turn, his tone shifted, cooler, sharper, like lowering the bar so low I could trip on it. The thin envelope slid my way. And you, he said, given your unconventional career choices, we decided it's best to provide a more modest inheritance. A studio apartment on Cedar Street should meet your needs. Studio. A short word, small and tidy, like a period. I sat still and took the envelope. Inside would be the deed to that little space, exactly the kind of thing they thought suited a daughter who'd lost her way. I glanced at Victoria, shaking her packet of mansion papers like proof of total victory. No one noticed my phone buzzing under the table. A brief notification flashed. The final contracts were signed. Global Towers acquisition complete. My heartbeat slowed, steady. My face didn't move. I simply raised my glass and took another sip of water. To my father, I was the failure who refused to take the expected path, the girl chasing pointless computer projects. To my mother, a burden, a long, unending disappointment. To Victoria, a joke, someone who'd never joined the real game of assets and power. The Cedar Street studio to them was Exhibit A for my defeat. But right then, pride rose in me. The little apartment wasn't an ending. It was a beginning they never imagined. While they basked in the glow of status, I built a separate empire in silence. In that moment, as envelopes slid across the table, an invisible border was drawn. On one side, the Bennetts, proud, biased, blind to the false shine around Victoria. On the other, me, dismissed, but holding enough leverage to flip the board. A studio, small, yes, but it would stand as proof of their blindness. While they sneered at the gift, I had turned that apartment into a lab for property management software, the bedrock of a global real estate empire. In the thickened air, with Victoria's triumphant laugh and my mother's condescending gaze, I sat still and let a private smile bloom. Only I knew the real game had just begun. Once the envelopes were handed out and the table seemed to settle, a new tide rose. Mockery. Victoria placed her thick envelope beside a plate of pastries, her slender finger stroking the flap as if petting a victory. She sipped her mimosa, eyes gleaming at me. "Oh, Sarah," she cooed, dragging out the last syllable to make room for pity. "That Cedar Street studio is truly adorable. Small, neat, perfect for a simple lifestyle." The room tittered. My mother tilted her head, delight flickering that Victoria, again, held the upper hand. She spun her diamond ring and said, "Honestly, Sarah, you should be thankful you have somewhere to go. The place is small, but it suits your capabilities. Not everyone is born to carry something big like Victoria." I kept still, strapped my hands to calm. I'd heard this too many times, the comparisons, the polite dismissals, care wrapped in barbs. Victoria pressed on. "You know, that studio will be easy to decorate. A little armchair, a tiny desk. You could even turn it into a workspace for your computer hobby. That software of yours, what was it again? Sounds cute. Not sure anyone else cares." My father nodded along. He set his knife and fork down, folded his arms, and let a cool disdain sharpen his eyes. "Sarah," he said, "you've wasted years on fantasies, computers, software, things no one in real estate respects. Victoria knows her place. She represents the family on big projects, at important signings. That's how you build a name." A public ruling. Victoria the heir, me the dreamer. I dipped my head, drank to mask a thin smile. While father and sister feasted on self-regard, my phone buzzed again. Press release goes live in 5 minutes. Beyond that table, the computer hobby they mocked was pivoting an entire industry. But in this room, truth didn't matter. Only the picture did. Victoria triumphant, me a failure. Mother leaned in, voice tight with judgment. "Sarah, rethink your career. You can't keep living on small projects. Managing a few units on the east side isn't a job. While Victoria leads a development, what do you do? Can you name one big thing you've accomplished?" Silence fell. All eyes on me, waiting for a confession or a flinch. Victoria smirked and lifted her glass in a private toast. "Maybe," she purred. "If you really work hard, one day you can afford a tiny unit in one of my buildings. I'll give you a discount." Soft laughter again, light and razor thin. Under the warm lights, I felt the thorns circling. Instead of retreating, I straightened. A cool spark cut through my gaze. No one at the table knew what I knew. In 5 minutes, the world would stop seeing Victoria as the golden heir, and that little studio they mocked would become a monument to their blindness. My father planted a big hand on the table. His voice filled the room. "It's time, Sarah. Come back to Bennett Investments. We'll start you somewhere humble, leasing perhaps. Learn from Victoria, not an offer. And an assignment, the final stamp ensuring I'd live under my sister's shadow. My phone lit up again, this time a call from my COO. Miss Winters, the release is going out. Global Towers has officially closed. All 300 luxury properties are now under your control. I pressed my lip to a smile, hiding it behind my coffee. While my family kept belittling me, the outside world was acknowledging a very different truth. The phone vibrated once more, and this time I didn't hide. Decision flashed in my eyes, the long-held smile finally loosening. I set my cup down and lifted my head, voice gentle but firm. "Excuse me, I need to take this call." My mother frowned, about to deliver her well-worn reprimand. "Sarah, this is a family meal. Your little leasing office can survive without you for an hour." But I was already standing. My chair slid back with a sound neat and final. I stepped aside and tapped speaker. Amanda's voice, my trusted COO, came through clear. "Miss Winters, the press release is live. The Global Towers acquisition is complete. All 300 luxury properties are now under your control, including the entire Bennett Investments portfolio." I looked back at the table. 3 faces, my father, my mother, and Victoria, locked in shock, each in a different stage. Doubt, confusion, fear. My tone stayed calm, but each word slipped like a blade into their painted picture. "Thank you, Amanda," I said loud enough for the room. "Please proceed." Victoria's mimosa slipped from her fingers, glass cracking against wood, champagne washing over the deed she'd just flaunted. The carefully made-up face that wore certainty and condescension twisted into panic. "What?" she stammered. "You said acquisition? But Bennett is ours." Right then, the wall-mounted TV sprang to life. A polished financial anchor spoke fast, riding the drama. In a seismic move shaking the global luxury real estate market, Global Towers International has completed the biggest property acquisition of the decade. The force behind this $4.2 billion deal is none other than 32-year-old CEO Sarah Winters. My father dropped his coffee. Porcelain shattered into the kind of silence that swallows a room. He stared at me, lips working, no words. The anchor continued while images of glittering towers and manicured estates rolled. Sources confirm Winters has been quietly building her empire for 7 years, starting with a revolutionary property management platform, now the industry standard. It's used by every major luxury firm, including Bennett Investments. My mother turned, color draining. "That little program, the software you worked on night after night, the one I told you to stop wasting time on?" I didn't need to answer. The question did the work for me. Victoria's eyes darted to my father. "Dad, say something. How is this possible? Are we losing everything?" I walked back to the table, each step slow and anchored. I no longer stood there as the daughter under pressure, but as a CEO with the levers in hand. "Not losing," I said, voice low and resonant. "Transferring. Everything you assumed was yours by default is now mine. The mansion you just gifted to Victoria. 5 minutes ago, it became Global Towers property, which means it's mine." Victoria gasped, fingers crushing the useless paper in her hands. My father tried to claw back authority, slamming his palm against the table. "Impossible. I would have known if anyone was buying our holdings." I tilted my head, eyes like a blade. "The way you knew Sterling Square was failing? Safety violations, payoffs to inspectors, structural cracks waiting to bring the tower down? You didn't know, because you never looked past the glitter Victoria staged for you. I did. I knew everything." The room went taut, the tick of the wall clock suddenly loud. Victoria recoiled, her chair skidding. How could you possibly know?" I held up my phone, reports and photos bright on the screen. I knew, and I timed it. In a month, Sterling Square would implode, literally and figuratively dragging Bennett into the pit. That's why I moved first. That's why your portfolio is mine. My father crumpled back into his chair, shoulders trembling. My mother covered her mouth as if she could hold the shock in her hands. Victoria clutched the table, eyes wide and hollow. On the TV, the anchor's voice landed like a gavel. Analysts estimate Winter's net worth now exceeds $7 billion, making her one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in the world. In that lavish room, all sound fell away except my own steady pulse. For the first time, I didn't have to bow under anyone's disdain. For the first time, power sat with me. I lowered myself into my chair, lifted my cup, and let a thin, sharp smile show. There's one thing you forgot. Not everyone needs an inheritance to win. Some of us build our empires while our own families look the other way. This moment is the proof. The air froze. Paintings on the wall, the golden hum of the chandelier, the gloss on the table. Everything sank under a heavy stillness. Only the TV kept talking, the anchor's voice echoing like a sentence for the Bennetts. This deal includes luxury properties across 3 countries, among them the entire portfolio formerly held by Bennett Investments. It's an unprecedented transfer of power in the high-end real estate sector. My father sat unmoving. The hands that once gripped power with ease now shook, veins rising. The eyes that always looked down from a height held only panic. He muttered, voice rough, 4.2 billion. No. How did you? The coffee stain spread across the floor. No one moved to wipe it. Victoria, pale as paper, curled over the now worthless deed. It was nothing more than a keepsake of an illusion. This isn't fair, she cried, voice sharp and breaking. You can't take everything. The mansion, it's mine. It's my reward for my work. I met her eyes, cool as ice. Work? You mean showing up late, letting your assistant do the thinking, and posing for empty photo ops? Victoria, my software kept Bennett from collapsing for the last 2 years. Without it, you'd have been bankrupt. But none of you wanted to see that. She had no answer, only trembling lips. My mother sat rigid, fingers crushing a napkin, voice trembling when she spoke. Sarah, you can't be serious. This is your family. No matter how successful you are, Bennett is blood. You can't just take everything. I tilted my head, a smile ghosting at my mouth. Blood? Do you remember how many times you dismissed my work as a pointless hobby? How often you said I'd never succeed unless I clung to your company? Well, here we are. I succeeded, and I did it without Bennett. My father scraped together the pieces of his old authority and slammed the table. I won't let this happen. I'll speak to partners, the banks. We still have influence. I laughed softly, joyless, edged. You think the banks will trust you after the press lays out Sterling Square's violations and bribes? In a month, it would have been a public catastrophe. You have nothing left to bargain with. Whatever you thought was power slipped through your fingers a long time ago. You just refused to see it. The last thread he clung to snapped. He sagged into the chair, eyes dulled, like a general finally seeing the battlefield lost. The TV rolled on. Experts say this cements Sarah Winters not only as one of the youngest female billionaires, but as a force reshaping the entire global luxury market. Sources confirm the Bennett Investments brand now sits wholly within global towers. Victoria sprang up, face warped with fury and fear. No! Sterling Square is my project. It's Bennett's crown jewel. You can't— Crown jewel? I cut in, my voice ablade. You mean the cracked tower held up by payoffs and negligence? You're not fit to manage a studio unit, let alone a complex, and now everyone knows. She collapsed back down, hands limp, eyes empty. My mother let the napkin fall. Her hands, empty and shaking, hovered over the table. She looked at me, pleading and undone. Sarah, can't we talk? We're family. Let's keep the peace. I stepped closer, laid my palm on the table between us, voice even and final. No, Mom, things won't go back. You chose not to stand with me when I needed you. You mocked, belittled, and grew comfortable on my back. I don't need your approval anymore. In that instant, truth stood bare. Father, mother, sister, sitting inside a mansion they assumed would always be theirs, now legally mine. They hadn't only lost property, they'd lost stature, arrogance, and the one thing that mattered most to them, control. I turned away, my voice carrying to the far corners of the room. From now on, the name Bennett is just a shadow in the record. That's the price of underestimating me. Behind me, the silence grew thick, not the hush of a fine meal, but the quiet after a dynasty falls. After shock came a long hush, as if the room itself waited for someone to break it. No clinking silver, no casual digs tossed across the table, every look fixed on me, the person they'd dismissed minutes earlier now standing like a judge. My father strained for old grandeur. You think you can ruin this family's name with a single deal? Bennett survived 3 generations. A name doesn't disappear because of your childish tricks. My gaze stayed steady, my words sliced clean. This isn't a trick, Dad, it's truth. Bennett survived, yes, on rotten foundations. Sterling Square isn't the future, it's a time bomb. You were busy bragging and missed the cracks under your feet. I didn't. I acted while there was time. The empire you worship now belongs to me. Victoria shot up, shrill and shaking. You just got lucky. Without that software, you're nothing. I'm the one who should lead Bennett, not you. I laughed once, short and bitter. Lucky, I wrote every line of that platform while you called it a silly hobby. I tested it in that tiny studio you use as a punchline. It's now the industry standard, the reason your company survived the last 2 years. That's not luck. That's intelligence and work, things you never had to cultivate. She fell back, mouth opening and closing on silence. My mother tried again, clinging to the last scrap of hope. Sarah, we can fix this. Use your power to protect Bennett, to keep it in the family. We're blood. You can't turn your back. I looked at her, cold as winter. Blood didn't stop you from cutting me down year after year. Blood didn't help Dad see my worth. Blood didn't keep Victoria from grinding my work under her heel. This family let me go a long time ago. Today you face the consequences. My father flushed, anger choking his voice. You're destroying your grandfather's legacy. I pressed each word. No, Dad, I'm saving it. He built Bennett with sweat, discipline, and faith in the work. You turned it into a stage. Victoria made it a costume. I kept his spirit, just not under your name. Now it lives as Global Towers. The TV switched to the gleam of new signage. Global Towers, lighting towers that once wore Bennett's letters. A live press conference flashed. Global Towers International confirms completion of its acquisition across 3 countries, including the entire Bennett Investments portfolio. A historic restructuring. Victoria hissed, strangled by panic. No, impossible. That's my mansion, my project. I leaned in, quiet but carrying. No, Victoria, it never was. It was something Dad handed you to feed a fantasy. The truth, you never created value. And today, that truth is in the open. My mother sank back, eyes shining. Sarah, did you do all this just for revenge? I paused, then let a thin smile touch my mouth. No, I did it because I believe in my own worth. Revenge is just a byproduct. If you hadn't belittled me, if you'd chosen support over scorn, perhaps we wouldn't be here. But you did, and here we are. I turned what you called a useless hobby into an empire the world recognizes. Silence again. My father had no arguments left. My mother, no alibis. Victoria clutched a meaningless deed. I looked at each of them in turn and gave a small nod, as if closing a trial. This is the truth, and sometimes truth is crueler than revenge. The dining room, once an echo chamber of praise for Victoria, had become a court. Every gaze on me now held panic, despair, and helplessness. I didn't need to slam the table or raise my voice. Power radiated from me, quiet and unarguable. The belittled daughter now held the gavel. My father spoke first, hauling himself upright, though his shoulders sagged. "Sarah, it can't end like this. Our family has a name, a legacy. If you dismantle it, we have nothing." I met his eyes, a faint smile at the corner of my mouth. "You're mistaken. You and Victoria have nothing. I don't. Global Towers keeps and grows value. Real legacy isn't the hollow word Bennett. It's the ability to build and sustain power. I did that." "You didn't." Victoria gripped the table, voice shaking with anger. "You can't do this to me. I'm the heir. I deserve to lead. You're just lucky, a traitor to your family." I turned, words honed to a knife. The heir, someone who can't generate a dollar, can't manage assets, spends money, and hides behind mom and dad. You were never an heir, Victoria. You were an actress in a family play. The curtains down. She opened her mouth to protest, but her wet eyes confessed the truth. It was gone. My mother tried to salvage something. "Sarah, if you've won everything, at least keep the family. We can start over, manage together. Your father, your sister." "No," I cut in, crisp enough to make the room flinch. "Family isn't a shield for injustice." I held out my hand again and again and got scorn in return. "You cut me out long ago. Today, you live with that decision." I bent to my father's level. "You once offered me a modest role in Bennett, starting in leasing. Here's my offer. If you, Mom, and Victoria wish to remain in properties owned by Global Towers, you'll rent at market rate. No privileges, no exceptions." It was a death sentence for old authority. Color drained from his face. Veins knotted in his clenched hand. My mother hiccuped softly. Victoria shook from head to toe. On the TV, workers pulled down the old Bennett letters from a skyscraper and lifted Global Towers into the light, a living emblem of the new order. I turned, letting each word fall with weight. "I don't need your acceptance. I don't need your late approval. My power no longer comes from the name Bennett. It comes from me. From today on, any decision touching your assets, portfolios, or homes goes through me." My father slammed the table, clawing at scraps of dignity. "You'll regret this. You can't hold it all alone. You'll collapse, Sarah." I lifted my chin, a calm smile. "Maybe, but if I fall, I'll fall on a structure I built. If I fail, I'll rebuild." "What about you? There's nothing left for you to rebuild." Victoria broke into sobs, face buried in shaking hands. The same woman who'd once bragged about big projects, now only a figure of ruin. My mother said nothing. Her eyes were empty, as if she finally understood how years of mockery had led them here. I walked toward the door. My voice lingered in the quiet, part declaration, part farewell. "This is the difference between us. You lived on inheritance. I live on ability. And when power changes hands, mercy isn't part of the transfer." The door closed behind me, leaving father, mother, and Victoria in a silence heavy enough to level a dynasty. 2 weeks after the brunch, I stood in the penthouse office of Global Towers headquarters. Glass walls opened to the city, sunset poured gold across the skyline. Global Towers blazed from towers that once wore the Bennett name, old memories eclipsed by the new reality. On my desk sat a stack-stamped Forbes. The cover showed me standing square to the camera, headline loud, "The Real Estate Queen, How Sarah Winters Built an Empire While Her Family Looked Away." I flipped through, a small smile playing. Reporters called me self-made, a force reshaping luxury real estate, a new emblem of intellect and grit. But what satisfied me most wasn't the praise, it was the simple fact. I did it without a single nod from my family. A chime sounded. Amanda stepped in with her tablet. "Ms. Winters, your family is here again. 3rd time this week." I lifted my eyes, a flicker of fatigue drifting through, then calm. "Send them up." The door opened. Father, mother, Victoria, without the swagger. My father, once a baritone at the head of the table, looked drawn, the sharp suit rumpled. My mother held herself as if manners might hold her upright, but her eyes had dulled. Victoria's salon-perfect hair was unraveled. Makeup couldn't hide her worry. My father set a trembling folder on the desk. "Sarah, Miss Winters, this is a revised proposal. If you give us a chance, we can fix it. We're still a family." I skimmed it, numbers without logic, plans stitched from desperation. I closed it and pushed it back. Who drafted this? Victoria? A contractor? Whoever it was, it can't hide the truth. Sterling Square destroyed confidence. Even if I handed your brand back, it would still collapse. Victoria snapped, voice near a scream. "You can't do this. You stole everything. You ruined my life." I sat straighter, eyes like stone. "No, Victoria. You ruined your life by choosing the easy path, sleeping on privilege instead of building value. You didn't lose everything because of me. You lost it to your own complacency." My mother stepped forward, fingers knotted. "Sarah, I'm sorry for dismissing you, for not believing in you. But could you forgive us? Could we live in the mansion again like before?" I drew a steady breath, my gaze softening for a heartbeat, then firming. "That mansion won't exist as you remember it. I'm converting it into an innovation center, a place to back young women entrepreneurs, the kind I used to be, the kind you overlooked. I'll make sure they get the support I never had from my family." Her mouth folded on a sob. Victoria broke into tears. My father bowed his head, knuckles white. I stood circling the desk, my voice rang low and clear. "You thought a studio apartment was an insult. It became my launch pad. You thought my work was meaningless. It saved Dad's company in silence before it became mine. You thought you were the center of the world. Today in my office, you're petitioners." The room went still. I rested a hand on the back of a leather chair and spoke softly, every word precise. "Don't mistake this. I don't hate you. I don't need revenge. What I wanted to prove, I've proven. True success doesn't require anyone's permission, least of all from those who doubted you." I nodded to Amanda. "Please see them out and give them the list of available units at market rates." 3 defeated silhouettes left. The door closed. I turned back to the glass and lifted my coffee. In the reflection, the mocked-at daughter was gone. In her place stood a woman who had built a company with intellect, patience, and faith in her own hands. Outside, the sun slid lower, wrapping the city in gold. The Global Towers logo burned against the horizon. I raised my cup and whispered, "Sometimes the smallest inheritance births the largest empire, especially when no one ever saw it coming."